Hi, I'm just recording a quick video to share the space where I will be growing compost and the materials that I've actually got for compost. It is getting quite dark here, so I am on reduced light, but if I just turn the camera around here a moment and show this area outside of the vinery, so my vinery is here, this is my vinery, and then just opposite there's an old vinery where all the glass is missing, etc. So it's a huge area. So I've got this area, let me step back a bit so you can see it. I have this area here that is actually quite deep. I mean, if you see that pallet there, it's probably 3.5 to 4 pallets deep at this end, full of nettles and things. And then further down it sort of gets to about 2.5, 3, probably 3 pallets wide at the other end. And at the moment there's a lot of weeds in here, including weed seed heads, which I've recently been told are actually higher in nitrogen, so they're good to get in the compost as long as I can get it hot enough. And then you see here I've got some bags of animal bedding that I get donated locally on the island to save people paying landfill, so I've got vast amounts of that. And you can't see, but in the background over here there's a pile. This is my compost that started where I've just been piling up used materials. But just behind it I've got a local horse rider who delivers her manure down here for me. And then if I keep going further back down towards the vinery, this is a bag of volcanic rock dust, remin. I've got a huge volume of that I need to get onto the beds. I'm not sure whether I put that on now before I put the cover crop on, and I'm going to put some like compost extract. I've got a friend that has a compost farm, and she hasn't got time to teach me, unfortunately, but she has she's given me some inoculated compost that I'm going to put in some water and mix it up, and then dilute it and use that to pour into the beds, hopefully to increase the microorganisms and make the soil better here. But that I don't know whether to put the volcanic rock dust down before or after. And then that's just our rubbish area. And I mean, this animal bedding donated is literally placed everywhere in the vinery. Lots of single-use plastic, I'm afraid, but I am giving them back their bags, so hopefully they will start to use the recycled bags where we can, and I'll start to giving them like chicken food bed bags and things, so they can start using those so they're not single-use bags. And then here we've got lots of areas with plain cardboard with no sellotape on, and I've got a bag which I'm really excited about. Here behind me I've got a bag of wool from a local zoo, the Accidental Zoo. They've sheared some of their sheep and donated this to me. I mean, we take most of their animal bedding and manures because they have things like goats and emus and sheep and things like that, and the pelleted poo, if a manure is pelleted or circular, that sort of structure, then you can use it as a cold composting method. So as it decomposes, it doesn't create as much heat, and you can use it directly on the beds rather than having to compost it for a long time. So cow manure you have to manure, and chicken manure you have to manure, rot down in a compost pile because it's too warm. But these other ones are cold compost materials, so you don't have to rot them down. And here I've got a bag from the Accidental Zoo. This is their animal bedding, so this is hay and straw with lots of animal manures in there. And then if I go further down here, I also have been collecting, I mean, there's everywhere you walk there are bags. I want to get this all into a compost heap, and I'm thinking some kind of windrow system, but I just need to do my research and make sure it gets hot enough, because I need to compost down those weed seeds heads, because I don't want to waste the organic material, but I don't also want those weeds sprouting up in the beds. And I have here behind me a large sort of circular bale of hay that they've cut from the fields that has gone sort of a bit rotten. It's not mouldy, but it's gone rotten, and it's not good for animal feed. So I've been given that, so that's quite good. But as I say, this animal bedding is, I mean, it is composting once it's in the bags. It's getting hot in here, so it's not. It is super urgent, but I'm trying to keep on top of things like the tomatoes and planting my winter crops at the moment and keeping things watered, because it's a huge task in here watering. But yeah, there is loads of it. And we will, in this bed behind me here, we've started to sort of spread the animal bedding. We've got beer grains in some of these bags here, and then we've got some outside in a cooler, dark area. We've got some bags of fresh beer grains that we will use because they're really high nitrogen. So we put all of those on here in layers. So we put we trim down the weeds, and then we put cardboard on top, and then we put the beer grains, and then we put some of the hay, which has some manure in, so it's kind of carbon and nitrogen. So I'm not too strict with the specific layers, but the balance, I try to get a good balance of the nitrogens and carbon. And this is the sort of thing we're trying to concentrate on. This is my monster, absolutely monster squash patch. I was down here 3 days ago, and this has grown since then. There was a path down the middle here, and the path is gone. And there are loads of fruit on there. I would show you, but I'm not entirely sure you'll be able to see them because the light is fading significantly. But I might try and do a video at the weekend to show you some of our pumpkins and squash that we have growing. And it's the same behind me. I mean, this is our working area. This is the cardboard. We get cardboard from a local supplier that sells drinks, and this is the cardboard that layers in between. So it's quite thin cardboard, so I tend to use about 3 layers of it and make sure it's overlapping, but it's brilliant because there's no sellotape and no staples in there, so it's much easier for us to lay. But if I just walk over here a moment, sorry, I'm a little bit out of breath climbing over everything and trying to do this video as quick as I can before I lose the light tonight. And this here is the area, this is our food forest, and I'm trying to focus on warm loving plants here because above me the vents don't open and it does get very hot. So we have got some tamarillo trees. I've got quite a large tamarillo tree here with fruit on, and behind I've got a couple I've just planted. So I've made like a bit of a triangle with those, and I'm making a bit of a guild. So I've planted some echinacea, which hopefully they get enough light because otherwise they might have to relocate once they're established. But they'll be okay here whilst they're establishing anyway, because they do need a lot of light and I don't want them to suffer. And then I have comfrey growing over here behind me, and I have borage. So I've got things that are going to go deep down into the ground and bring the nutrients back up. But yeah, and there's some fruit bushes in here, some currant plants and things like that. And I'll also be planting some oca tubers in here because they're from the Andes and they like quite warm temperatures. Like here, for example, behind me is a raised bed that we've put oca tubers in. We put them in here originally because we weren't sure what we were doing in this area, and they can be a little bit invasive if you don't pull them all up. And when I say invasive, I just mean they're prolific. So the tubers, if you don't get them all up, a bit like a Jerusalem artichoke, you can end up with them just keep coming back again. But now I know this area is going to be a permanent food forest area, I will allow this area to sort of be taken over by those type of things. So sweet potatoes, which are going to do really well in here. So next year I'm going to plant a lot more of these and a lot earlier because they do like the conditions, the heat in here. And behind me over here I've got sort of my newest area, which is cardboard, mushroom compost, layers of different materials, and I've got the ochres in here, and I've got currants and things in there as well. And then behind me, miraculously, since I was here a few days ago, this is my Jerusalem artichoke, but it's a smooth skin one rather than a knobbly one, but it has grown really tall, and this is perfect for in here because it likes quite dry conditions. And it's just thriving, and hopefully it'll flower before the end of the summer. And again, that can be prolific, as in it will multiply in the ground. If you don't dig anything up, it will just continue to sort of spread. But I'm pretty happy for that to happen now that I know this area is permanent food forest, because behind me are the beds that we were making with layers that we ran out of time in the spring, so we're going to come back to that in the autumn. But this will be things like sweet corn, which I need to make sure they're not too near to the tamarillo trees because they are of the same family and they can be affected by the same pests. So if I just clamber back over the cardboard, it's a bit unnerving when it starts to get dark down here because I've just seen a couple of rats chasing each other through the undergrowth, and whilst I'm not scared of rats particularly, I'm not keen on them, and I'd rather not think they're down here because at some point they will start to eat the squash and things. And when I said about trying to show you a picture of the squash, don't know if you can see the focus of that squash. It's quite difficult to focus down there in this light, but they're the sort of squash we have growing here, and there are a lot of them. And there's a pumpkin. Actually, so you can see that again. It's getting a bit dark, and so that is all grown through from the other side of this fence. So this whole area of squash and pumpkin here, which obviously love this vinery conditions here. We're keeping them watered and they're obviously loving the protection, but that is just grown through from next door. So this is an area where we've just laid, it was a wild area. The weeds were up to sort of my shoulder height, and we just trimmed them all down and then put animal sawdust and manure from rabbits. We've got local rabbit keepers that bring that for us. So because we didn't have time to make beds and things, we just literally laid that sawdust down here, which with hindsight we should have put cardboard down first, because I didn't realise it would be full of bindweed, because the rest of the vinery isn't, but this area is very heavily carpeted in bindweed and brambles, which I've been trying to keep on top of, pulling up as steep as I can. But you'll see that behind me what I did was we put the sawdust down, and then we built little hills of bagged organic compost. We pulled back the sawdust, because you don't ever want to put soil on top of the sawdust, because it will sort of rob the nitrogen from the soil underneath as the sawdust decomposes. But it's okay on top as a mulch. So we pulled that back, made little like volcano sort of little wells in the sawdust, and then we topped it with organic bagged compost, wall compost from Dalesford. And then I planted 2 or 3 squash or pumpkin plants for each mound, and they're sort of scrambling along, and we've got lots of squash growing here, winter squash. But we did plant them really, really late. I was away for the season I needed to sow them, so we are hoping that we get lots of fruit on them. And obviously next year I need some sort of irrigation system in here, because it's quite tough getting all the way to the back, treading through all the vines to water each of the mounds and to find where the mounds are. So next year I'm going to make sure we've got an irrigation system here.